Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, and this is How Often Should I? How often should I change my oil? Well, that's a bit of a loaded question. It really determines on your machine and how you use it. Now, any type of high performance application, whether it be on a road track or a dirt track, really every weekend that you go out there for a track day, you're going to need to go ahead and change your oil. Now, does that apply for your street machine when you're riding it every day? Certainly not. I mean, you want to get a lot more than just a few hundred miles out of an oil change. Now, as far as utility vehicles go, if you're just out riding around the farm or your backyard, it's really not that important. But if you're pulling a heavy load of any type all day long, you need to do it more often than they would suggest in the owner's manual. Because let's face it, oil and filters, they are cheap. And going in and having to repair an engine that's been overworked after the oil is broken down, well, that gets very expensive. In my humble opinion, you need to take whatever the manufacturer suggests. Let's say it's 10,000 miles, just using a number. I would reduce that by 25%. So I'd be changing my oil on a regular basis at 7,500 miles. Now, granted, I just used a large number where we could do easy math, but you get the meaning. Now, by changing your oil more frequently, trust me, I've seen it on several machines. When you pull apart that engine, it's going to look like it just got assembled. And if you push it all the way and then a little bit further, you're going to be faced with sludge and that brown buildup of tarnish that gets on everything. And is that destructive to your engine? It can be if you let it go too far, but by changing your oil more frequently, you eliminate that possibility. How often should I change and check my tires? Well, honestly, every time you get on your machine or before you get on your machine, you need to go through a pre-ride checklist. Check your tire pressure, check your oil level, make sure you've got enough coolant, and look at your tires. They're going to tell you when it's time for a new set, because you will find little wear bars. If they get down to that depth, it's time for a new set. The other thing that you need to take into account is the date code that's on all your DOT tires. It's going to tell you how old the tires are. Now, my rule of thumb is I don't want to run a set of tires that are more than 5 years old. And that's just for the street. Now, as far as the track goes, it's a different compound. It's going to degrade quicker. I'd say the outside time frame would be about a year to maybe 2 years max. Because let's face it, if you're on the track, you're running it at 10 tenths, and you need tires that are up to the task. Now let's talk about your ATVs and side-by-sides. Now that's going to be fairly obvious, because when you've worn down your tires and your knobbies are only about sticking out maybe 1/4 of an inch, it's time to go ahead and get a new set of shoes for your ride. Other thing you need to look out for, especially on utilities that don't get used that often, they most of the time do not have date code. Now, the other telltale sign that you need to look for, especially if you don't know when the tires were installed, is they will start to tell you, because on the sidewall it will develop small cracks all the way around. You see those cracks? It's time to get rid of those tires. How often should I change my air filter? Well, that's another loaded question, as always. So you're going to get a variance of answers from me depending on what type of machine that we're talking about. Now, if we're talking about a general street bike, whether it be sport or a cruiser, I would say in between 6,000 to 8,000 miles, you need to at least go look at it. Because you may think you're riding through clean air, but there's no telling what's coming off of the road and getting pulled up into the intake, because that is at the very front of your machine in most cases. Now, as far as ATVs and side-by-sides go, and of course you know I'm going to make this delineation. If you've got one out on a racetrack, you need to check it after each weekend before you head out the next weekend. Now, on the utility side, or you're just playing around in the backyard, I would say about every week. So if you're working your machine, your Monday morning checklist, go ahead and take a peek at it. On all the ATVs and side-by-sides, they know what environment they're going to be in, and they designed them to handle it. So they've made access to the air filter usually pretty easy. All you got to do is pull a cover, take a peek, make sure it's in good shape, and then go on. One last note, if you are running a machine with an aftermarket type air filter, you may want to check it a little bit more frequently. Those are generally a little bit higher flowing, and to get that higher flow, they're usually a little bit more porous and they hold back less, or they're less restrictive compared to the OEM. Therefore, you really need to check that one more often to make sure it's not stopped up. How often should you clean and lube the chain on your machine? Recommended from the manufacturer, they suggest a certain amount of mileage. For me, it all breaks down to what environment your machine is getting used in. And if your street machine has a chain on it and you're just cruising up and down the road, not really putting a whole lot of stress on it, I would say this needs to be something that you check out and clean up, let's say once every 2 to 3 weeks. And if you're really running your machine hard and really putting a lot of stress on the chain, it is going to stretch quicker, of course. So that you need to take a look at every week. Now, as far as off-road goes, most of your utility type machines, they are set up with a really heavy chain, and it's designed to go the long haul. So they don't need to be cleaned that often. But if you're constantly in water and mud, they're going to have to be looked at a lot more often, because all that water and mud gets into the joints and into each individual link, and it acts like an abrasive, and it will wear out your chain like that. Now, if you are on a regular schedule of going in and cleaning up the chain and then resealing it with the new lube, it's going to last a lot longer, of course. Now let's talk about the performance side of it. Most of the time, those chains are as small and as light as they can get away with that can handle the power. Now, by doing that, they're going to need more attention. So I would say after every event, go back there and at least do a quick slack measurement to make sure you don't need to adjust it, even between races. If you're just having a weekend out with the friends, I'd say at the end of each day, go take a peek at it, maybe spray it down with some cleaner at the event, then reseal it before you head back out on the track or trail. How often should I change my brake pads? Well, this is, for the most part, pretty easy to see. Most of your brake pads, they're gonna have a pad area, and then right in the center, they're gonna be split, usually in at least one place, maybe even more, depending on the size of the pad. When it wears down to where that valley disappears, those pads are done. Now, with your street and utility type machines, you can get away with running it down that far, but I want to warn you, if you're out on the track with pads, I usually don't take them that far, because you're using them more aggressively and more often, and the thinner that pad material gets, the more heat it's going to build up, because it can't dissipate it, because it's going directly into that pad backing, which is a big, thick piece of metal. By virtue of that, they're going to get hotter, they're going to wear down quicker, and before you know it, they're going to be gone. So by the time I get down to within about 2 or 3 millimeters thickness, regardless of where that channel is on the track, I'm going to go ahead and replace them. Well, there you go. Now, if there's another topic you want us to discuss, why don't you leave us a comment in the section below, and we can address that one as well. Till then, y'all have a great day.